All right, everybody. Hieroglyphics. Last night, you guys were able to spell out your own names in hieroglyphics, and today we're going to take a look at the experts' versions of the hieroglyphics. All right, and if you couldn't tell already, it is picture writing, so a little bit different. They're using pictures. We use letters to spell things. Right. So this is obviously a very elaborate form of writing. Obviously, when you're doing figures and animals and everything else, that makes it a little bit more complex and a little bit more difficult for doing your alph- doing your alphabet when you're in kindergarten and first grade, right? So those little multi-lined papers that you had where you put in like do the letter A like 5 times in a row. These are definitely a little bit more difficult than that. So, and I'm glad I did not have to do these because I'm terrible at drawing, and this would have exposed me as being a very bad speller too, because you probably wouldn't have been able to figure out what I was drawing. All right. So they were called the words of God. And again, there's a religious connection here that's being used to show the significance and the importance of writing. That can't be understated enough or overstated enough. Um, we don't think too much about writing being significant and about power. But that's because pretty much probably every single person you know can read or write. In this time period, not the case. Reading and writing is something done by those with power and those with religious authority at the same time. So as you can see, it's mostly used by the priests, and they're going to use it to help decorate the walls of the temples as well. So you can sort of look at those as being sort of the um, uh, think about it think of it as like Bible verses on the walls of these temples, right? Now they had an easier version to use, a more simplified version called hieratics that were used for business purposes. So think about like a business transaction, like I sold 50 cattle for $100, right? That's basically what hieratics would be used for, right? So obviously they're not using dollars. I'm just giving that as an example, sort of how they would keep track and write down business transactions. So that's what they were doing. All right. Again, these are very elaborate. All right. Now it's confusing at times, obviously, to read these hieroglyphics because one of the things they'll let you know is that the way that the animal points is pointing to the start of the writing. So here in the middle, you've got two ducks or mallards pointing in opposite directions. So do you start here and here? Like there's multiple examples of that. So I know I would be getting extremely confused by this on a regular basis. Maybe it's much easier when you're doing it all the time, but it still seems very confusing to me. All right. They write in rows or columns, all right, and you could read from left to right or from right to left. There's no real designation. Again, that could be extremely confusing if you think about it, all right? And again, just repeating here about how the way that they face is always the beginning of the line, all right? And you did read from top to bottom. So that's one sort of consistent factor that's an element about reading hieroglyphics, right? This is another example of it. Literally, it's a piece from a temple wall that shows you examples of not just hieroglyphics, but also art as well. And obviously, this art is getting a little bit more advanced than the cave art paintings that we had seen and talked about earlier. All right. Now, one of the things or the primary translator for hieroglyphics will be the Rosetta Stone. Right? This can be found by French soldiers, and this can be analyzed by British scientists in order to figure out, all right, what the Rosetta Stone was. And they figured out that it was ancient Greek and then 2 different forms of hieroglyphics. And the key thing about that is they will make the determination that it's all the same thing. Like it's the same sort of passages that have been written just in 3 different languages. So knowing how to translate ancient Greek then gives you the ability to be able to then translate the hieroglyphics. All right. So you guys are going to watch this video. I'm not going to go through the video with you, but watch the video that shows you the Rosetta Stone. All right. And then last but not least, again, this sort of gets into what they did here, but Champollion, again, used ancient Greek text to figure out what the hieroglyphics meant, right? And it was done, the Rosetta Stone itself was done to honor an Egyptian pharaoh, all right? So it's kind of a listing of his accomplishments that he's done that were good for the people of Egypt, all right? So that's the end, right? Obviously, some of these slides presentations aren't very long and filled with too much content, but again, it's easier to kind of go through them bit by bit through this, all right? So these are hieroglyphics, and again, just make sure that you watch that video as well, all right? Thanks, guys.